Hi everyone, welcome back to DGMC, Diwan-e-Ghalib, Meri Subani. To all our returning viewers, we are very happy you could join us again. And to the new viewers, we are delighted you discovered the podcast and decided to tune in for the first time. Now, if you were with me in the previous episode, you know that currently we are going through Ghazal 26 from Diwan-e-Ghalib, Gar Nigaah-e Andoh-e-Shab-e-Furqat bayaan ho jaaega. We've already covered 6 couplets. Today we are going to pick the 7th couplet. As always, I'm going to read the couplet first and then we will get into the key words and then concepts and finally the impression. So this is how it goes. बाग में मुझको ना ले जा, बाग में मुझको ना ले जा वरना मेरे हाल पर हर गुल-ए-तर एक चश्मे खून-फिशां हो जाएगा. So let's do a quick approximate translation. First line, बाग में मुझको ना ले जा वरना मेरे हाल पर. Pretty straightforward. The translation is, don't take me into the garden, otherwise on my state, on my condition. Second line, हर गुल-ए-तर एक चश्मे खून-फिशां हो जाएगा. Every rose, moist rose, will become a blood scattering eye. So that is the approximate translation. Let's start picking the keywords. Baagh. Baagh translates to a garden, a grove, an orchard, plantation, anything with plants in it. इस पे मीर तकी मीर का बहुत फेमस शेर, पत्ता पत्ता बूटा बूटा हाल हमारा जाने है, जाने न जाने गुल ही न जाने बाग तो सारा जाने है. So the approximate translation is, leaf after leaf, bud after bud knows my condition, knows my state. It's only the rose that doesn't know it. Otherwise, the entire garden is aware of my state, aware of my condition. मुस्तार खैराबादी का ये शेर, मेरा वक्त मुझसे बिछड़ गया, मेरा रंग रूप बिगड़ गया, जो खिज़ां से बाग उजड़ गया, मैं उसी की फसले बहार हूँ. Beautiful couplet. The approximate translation is, my time has deserted me. My color, radiance, beauty has left me. The garden that got destroyed by autumn, to that garden I belong because I was the spring of that garden. I was the spring of that garden, that same garden which lies destroyed by autumn and winter currently. So that was Baagh. Now there are 2 other words in the first line. Warnaa, it's a very simple word, we still use it. What it translates to is otherwise or lest this happens. And then haal, like we said, state or condition. Moving on to the second line. This has 2 big word complexes. The first one is gul-e-tar. Gul is rose, tar is moist. So basically a fresh, dew-drenched rose. And in Urdu poetry, it is many times used to refer to the beloved's dew-drenched, moist, beautiful face. इस पे बशीर फारूक का ये शेर, वो कभी शाखे गुल-ए-तर की तरह लगता है और कभी दशनाओ खंजर की तरह लगता है. So the approximate translation is, at times she seems like a branch of beautiful dew-drenched blossoms of rose. But then there are times when she looks like the dagger and knife itself. And of course, she is referring to the beloved. शौक बहराइची का ये शेर, ज़ाहिराना ये बुत तो है नाजुक गुले-तर की तरह, दिल मगर होता है कमबख्तों का पत्थर की तरह. So the approximate translation is, yes, it is very evident that these idols, right, and of course referring to the beauties and the beloved, have the delicacy, have the fragility of a dew-drenched rose blossom. But damn, their hearts, on the other hand, are as cold and as hard as stone itself. So their outer appearance is as delicate and fragile as the rose, but the heart lying underneath is as hard as stone. So that was the first word complex. The second word complex in the second line is Chashm-e-Khuun-Fishaan. Chashm is eyes, Khuun is blood, and Fishaan translates to scattering, spraying, ejecting forcefully. तो इस पर ताशुक लखनवी का ये शेर, मुंतजिर तेरे हैं चश्मे खून फिशा खोले हुए, बैठे हैं दिल बेचने वाले दुकान खोले हुए. So the approximate translation is, you're expectant, your people waiting for you have opened up their eyes, their blood scattering, blood shooting eyes for you. And yes, we are sitting in your path with the market of our hearts open so that we can give our heart to you. मीर खलीक का ये शेर, अश्क जो चश्मे खून फिशा से गिरा, ब्यूटिफुल कपलेट, अश्क जो चश्मे खून फिशा से गिरा था सितारा की आसमां से गिरा. Approximate translation is, that tear that dropped from the blood shooting eyes of the lover almost seemed as if a star dropped from the sky itself, from the heavens above. So that takes care of all the keywords and word complexes in the couplet. Let's get into the impression. First line, बाग में मुझको ना ले जा वरना मेरे हाल पर. Don't take me into the garden, otherwise over my condition or state. That's the translation. Now, the way this line came to us, right, the way we perceived it, it was Ghalib in this first line is issuing, number one, a request, na le ja, don't take me, please don't take me, right? And number two, he's issuing a warning, warnaa, right, otherwise. So the line comes across both as a request by Ghalib and as a warning. The first line is fairly easy to translate, but like I said, the essence of the line lies in the fact that Ghalib is requesting that he should not be taken into the garden, because if he's taken into the garden, his state, his own condition will adversely affect the garden. Now, what will that adverse effect be? We will cover in the second line. But for now, we get the sense that if Ghalib was to be taken into the garden or forced to go into the garden, his state or condition will have a undesirable effect on the garden. Now, both the request and the warning Ghalib gives in the first line is somehow coming across as being or as embedded in Ghalib's inner knowing. Ghalib's inner knowing of the impact his state is going to have on the garden. And of course, when we will get to the second line, we will know a garden generally, but gul or rose specifically. Now, in the background of this couplet, and this is where it gets interesting, right? In the background of this couplet, when we were trying to put an impression together, we realized there were so many concepts playing. And true to DGMZ's nature, we always believe if you don't know the concepts, you will not be able to enjoy and relish the couplet fully, right? In its depth. You can translate it, probably you can understand it, but to relish it, to savor it, to enjoy it, you should know the background concepts, right? So in the first line, the background concept is kind of unsaid. It's not clearly called out. In the second line, it is called out very clearly. Two concepts in the second line, we'll cover it there. But in the first line, it is not clearly called out. It is an unsaid concept. Now, the strong unsaid concept that is playing in the first line is the Gulo-Bulbul dynamic. And we will take the opportunity this couplet offers to explore this. I think we are going to do it for the first time at DGMZ. It is a famous, extensively used concept in Urdu poetry, so definitely worth our time to grab it in its totality as part of the impression today. So what is the Gulo-Bulbul dynamic? Number one, what is Gulo-Bulbul? So Gul is flower, usually referred to the rose flower in specific. Gul from gulab, short for gulab, which is rose. And then Bulbul is the nightingale. Now, Gulo-Bulbul, it has its origin and roots deep in traditional Persian legend, which portrays the nightingale Bulbul alongside the rose Gul. In these Persian narratives, the nightingale is an ever-searching bird that sings a heartbreaking, sweet song for its beloved, the rose. हैदर अली आतिश का ये शेर, ये आरजू थी तुझे गुल के रूबरू करते, हम और बुलबुले बेताब गुफ्तगू करते. Approximate translation, this was my desire, to keep you beloved face to face in parallel with the rose. And then, while you and rose sat in front of me and Bulbul, both anxious in love, right, would talk and exchange notes, right? With both the beloveds in front of us, we as lovers would then exchange notes. Beautiful couplet. नूनारवी का ये शेर, गुलजार में ये कहती है बुलबुल गुल-ए-तर से, देखे कोई माशूक को आशिक की nazar se. So the approximate translation is, when the garden is in full spring, this is what the nightingale says to the dew-drenched rose. If you ever want to look at the beloved, you should have the eyes of the lover. मीर तकी मीर का ये शेर, गुलो बुलबुल बहार में देखा, एक तुझको हजार में देखा. Beautiful couplet. Approximate translation, I saw the rose and the nightingale in the flourishing spring, and this is how I saw you in hundreds of things, beloved. The rose reminded me of you. The nightingale reminded me of me. All roses reminded me of you. All nightingales reminded me of me. So that is the start of our Gulo-Bulbul dynamic. Gul representing the beloved rose, and Bulbul representing the lover, nightingale. Some of the poetic names for the Bulbul reflect the magic of its song. Hazar Dastan, Hazar Awaz, or simply Hazra, which is someone with 1,000 melodies. As you know, Hazar is 1,000, so Hazra is somebody with 1,000 melodies. परवीन उमे मुश्ताक का ये शेर, बुलबुल ना बाज आइयो फरियादो आह से, कब तक ना होगी कल्बे गुले-तर को इत्तला. So the approximate translation is, nightingale, do not stop, do not give up on your laments and complaints and sighs of pain and grief. After all, For how long will they not hit the mark, which is the heart of the dew-drenched flower, dew-drenched rose. मीर तकी मीर का ये शेर, मस्ताना साथ मेरे रोती फिरे है बुलबुल, गुल से जो दिल लगा है अब तार है हाल उसका. Approximate translation is, intoxicated, almost drunk, along with me roams the nightingale crying. Along with me, it is also roaming, crying and lamenting ever since she has fallen in love with the rose. Her heart is ruined. Her heart is miserable. Her heart is grieved. Now, as you can see, the Gulo Bulbul dynamic, how beautifully it plays into Urdu poetry, Urdu shairi, and of course it played in the Persian poetry. That's where it originated. But this bird and flower theme is not only traditional in poetry, but it is also traditional in painting. Now, Gulo Murg, flower and bird style of painting, is a type of traditional Persian way of painting in which the flower is the beloved and the bird is the lover. Persian painters drew upon literary images of the rose as a metaphor for love and beauty to create symbolic compositions. A whole art form called Golomurg, Golo, and Morgh. I'm sure there's a Persian pronunciation to it, which I'm not doing justice to, but spelled it out for you just for your awareness. So a whole art form where the paintings are focused on a bird and a flower in different scenarios, in different backgrounds, etc. So poetry, how it plays in poetry, the Gulo Bulbul dynamic, painting. Now moving on to the Sufi mystical symbolism of Gulo Bulbul. The stories of the rose and the nightingale were romantic narratives that became the basis of Sufi views. The Gul, rose, became a metaphor for perfection and beauty and was regarded as the beloved. The Bulbul, nightingale, with its longing for the rose, became a metaphor for the soul's yearning for union with God and was regarded as the lover. The bulbul in the mystical realm has one and only one concern: the short life that Gul has in the garden of time, the short life that the rose has in the garden of time. The rose will blossom as the nightingale sings. हसरत मोहानी का ये शेर, कफस में हो दिले बुलबुल, शहीदे जलवाए गुल, खिजा ने जो न किया था वो अब बहार करे. Approximate translation is, in the cage is the heart of the nightingale, which is getting sacrificed on the beautiful splendor of the rose. What the autumn and winter could not achieve is going to happen in the season of spring this time. So the rose will blossom as the nightingale sings. The rose will scatter and wither as the nightingale laments. इस पर मिर्ज़ा गालिब का शेर, कहता है कौन नालाए बुलबुल को बेअसर, पर्दे में गुल के लाख जिगर चाक हो गए. Approximate translation is, who says, who asserts that the laments of the nightingale go waste, fall on deaf ears? Don't you know that under the camouflage of the rose lie 1,000,000 hearts that were split, torn apart, thanks to the laments of the nightingale? And Bedil Azimabadi का ये शेर, बर्ग हाय गुले तर कैसे बिखर जाते हैं, बर्ग हाय गुले तर कैसे बिखर जाते हैं, गिरियाए बुलबुले नाला में असर होता है. Approximate translation is, the leaves, the petals, alas, of this dew-drenched rose, look how they scatter and fall off. After all, the pain-filled laments and cries of the nightingale too have an impact. They do tear at the heart of the rose. Look how its leaves tear apart and fall off. So, rose will blossom as the nightingale sings, rose will scatter and wither as the nightingale laments. Moving on to the third point, Gul and Bulbul in time's garden symbolize both the fragility and eternity of love. इस पर फ़कीर जलालपुरी का ये शेर, खिज़ा की ज़द में गुल-ए-तर है क्या किया जाए, यही चमन का मुकद्दर है क्या किया जाए. The approximate translation is, in the grips of autumn, in the grips of winter is the dew-drenched rose now. This is the rule, this is the principle of the garden of time. What can you do? The rose will succumb to the to autumn, to winter. Carrying on the Sufi mystical message, right? This Gul-o-Bulbul dynamic sends out. One gul will fade and wither, another gul will bloom, and in parallel a new bulbul will be born. One rose will bloom, then it will fade and wither, another rose will bloom, and in parallel another nightingale will be born. The bulbul's egg, it is said, the nightingale's egg causes a wave of excitement in the garden. Not because it will lead to a new bird, but because it will lead to a new lover. The garden flourishes, looks forward to listening to the love songs and the laments that the nightingale sings for the rose, its beloved. Now, इस पे शाह नासिर का एक बहुत प्यारा शेर, सुबह गुलशन में हो गर वो गुले खानदां पैदा, बाइज़ाए गुंचा से हो बुलबुले नाला पैदा. The approximate translation is, if in the auspicious garden of time, probably in the auspicious garden, you see the flower, the rose flower blossoming, then from the bud of the same flower, you will see the lament of the nightingale lover emit. So the rose cannot exist without the nightingale. In the couplet, it almost says, from the same bud as the rose is blossoming, you will see the emission of the nightingale's love songs and lament. That is how close the association is. That is how much interdependency exists between the two and their existence in the garden. So, we covered Gul-o-Bulbul in poetry, we covered Gul-o-Bulbul in painting, we covered Gul-o-Bulbul in Sufi mystical concept. Now, the theme of the rose and the nightingale in Persian mystical poetry has also inspired European poets such as Wolfgang Goethe and Rainer Maria Rilke. But for our episode, we will quote Oscar Wilde's poignant fairy tale, The Nightingale and the Rose, which is inspired by this old traditional Persian theme of Gul-o-Bulbul. The Nightingale and the Rose by Oscar Wilde, narrated at DGMC. She said that she would dance with me if I brought her red roses, cried the young student. But in all my garden there is no red rose. From her nest in the home oak tree, the nightingale heard him, and she looked out through the leaves and wondered, No red rose in all my garden, he cried, and his beautiful eyes filled with tears. Ah, on what little things does happiness depend? I have read all that the wise men have written, and all the secrets of philosophy are mine, yet, for want of a red rose, is my life made wretched. Here at last is a true lover, said the nightingale. Night after night have I sung of him. Though I knew him not, night after night have I told his story to the stars, and now I see him. His hair is dark as the hyacinth blossom, and his lips are red as the rose of his desire. But passion has made his lace like pale ivory, and sorrow has set her seal upon his brow. The prince gives a ball tomorrow night, murmured the young student, and my love will be of the company. If I bring her a red rose, she will dance with me till dawn. If I bring her a red rose, I shall hold her in my arms, and she will lean her head upon my shoulder, and her hand will be clasped in mine. But there is no red rose in my garden, so I shall sit lonely, and she will pass me by. She will have no heed of me, and my heart will break. Here indeed is the true lover, said the nightingale. What I sing of, he suffers. What is joy to me, to him is pain. Surely love is a wonderful thing. It is more precious than emeralds, and dearer than fine opals. Pearls and pomegranates cannot buy it, nor is it set forth in the marketplace. It may not be purchased of the merchants, nor can it be weighed out in the balance for gold. The musicians will sit in their gallery, said the young student, and play upon their stringed instruments, and my love will dance to the sound of the harp and the violin. She will dance so lightly that her feet will not touch the floor, and the courtiers in their gay dresses will throng round her. But with me she will not dance, for I have no red rose to give her. And he flung himself down on the grass and buried his face in his hands and wept. Why is he weeping? Asked a little green lizard as he ran past him with his tail in the air. Why indeed, said a butterfly who was fluttering about after a sunbeam. Why indeed, whispered a daisy to his neighbor in a soft, low voice. He is weeping for a red rose, said the nightingale. For a red rose, they cried. How very ridiculous! And the little lizard, who was something of a cynic, laughed outright. But the nightingale understood the secret of the student's sorrow, and she sat silent in the oak tree and thought about the mystery of love. Suddenly, she spread her brown wings for flight and soared into the air. She passed through the grove like a shadow, and like a shadow she sailed across the garden. In the center of the grass plot was standing a beautiful rose tree, and when she saw it, she flew over to it and lit upon a spray. Give me a red rose, she cried, and I will sing you my sweetest song. But the tree shook its head. My roses are white, it answered, as white as the foam of the sea, and whiter than the snow upon the mountain. But go to my brother who grows round the old sundial, and perhaps he will give you what you want. So the nightingale flew over to the rose tree that was growing round the old sundial. Give me a red rose, she cried, and I will sing you my sweetest song. But the tree shook its head. My roses are yellow, it answered, as yellow as the hair of the mermaiden who sits upon an amber throne, and yellower than the daffodil that blooms in the meadow before the mower comes with his scythe. But go to my brother, who grows beneath the student's window, and perhaps he will give you what you want. So the nightingale flew over to the rose tree that was growing beneath the student's window. Give me a red rose, she cried, and I will sing you my sweetest song. But the tree shook its head. My roses are red, it answered, as red as the feet of the dove, and redder than the great fans of coral that wave and wave in the ocean cavern. But the winter has chilled my veins, and the frost has nipped my buds, and the storm has broken my branches, and I shall have no roses at all this year. One red rose is all I want, cried the nightingale. Only one red rose. Is there no way by which I can get it? There is a way, answered the tree, but it is so terrible that I dare not tell it to you. Tell it to me, said the nightingale. I am not afraid. If you want a red rose, said the tree, you must build it out of music by moonlight and stain it with your own heart's blood. You must sing to me with your breast against a thorn. All night long you must sing to me, and the thorn must pierce your heart, and your lifeblood must flow into my veins and become mine. Death is a great price to pay for a red rose, cried the nightingale. And life is very dear to all. It is pleasant to sit in the green wood and to watch the sun in his chariot of gold and the moon in her chariot of pearl. Sweet is the scent of the hawthorn, and sweet are the bluebells that hide in the valley, and the heather that blows on the hill. Yet love is better than life. And what is the heart of a bird compared to the heart of a man? So she spread her brown wings for flight and soared into the air. She swept over the garden like a shadow, and like a shadow she sailed through the grove. The young student was still lying on the grass where she had left him, and the tears were not yet dry in his beautiful eyes. Be happy, cried the nightingale, be happy. You shall have your red rose. I will build it out of music by moonlight and stain it with my own heart's blood. All that I ask of you in return is that you will be a true lover, for love is wiser than philosophy. Though she is wise and mightier than power, though he is mighty. Flame-colored are his wings, and colored like flame is his body. His lips are sweet as honey, and his breath is like frankincense. The student looked up from the grass and listened, but he could not understand what the nightingale was saying to him, for he only knew the things that are written down in books. But the oak tree understood and felt sad, for he was very fond of the little nightingale who had built her nest in his branches. Sing me one last song, he whispered. I shall feel very lonely when you are gone. So the nightingale sang to the oak tree, and her voice was like water bubbling from a silver jar. When she had finished her song, the student got up and pulled a notebook and a lead pencil out of his pocket. She has form, he said to himself as he walked away through the grove, that cannot be denied to her. But has she got feeling? I am afraid not. In fact, she is like more artists. She is all style without any sincerity. She would not sacrifice herself for others. She thinks merely of music, and everybody knows that the arts are selfish. Still, it must be admitted that she has some beautiful notes in her voice. What a pity it is that they do not mean anything or do any practical good. And he went into his room and lay down on his little pallet bed and began to think of his love, and after a time he fell asleep. And when the moon shone in the heavens, the nightingale flew to the rose tree and set her breast against the thorn. All night long she sang with her breast against the thorn, and the cold crystal moon leaned down and listened. All night long she sang, and the thorn went deeper and deeper into her breast, and her life blood ebbed away from her. She sang first of the birth of love in the heart of a boy and a girl. And on the topmost spray of the rose tree there blossomed a marvelous rose, petal following petal, as song followed song. Pale was it at first as the mist that hangs over the river, pale as the feet of the morning, and silver as the wings of the dawn. As the shadow of a rose in a mirror of silver, as the shadow of a rose in a water pool, so was the rose that blossomed on the topmost spray of the tree. But the tree cried to the nightingale to press closer against the thorn. "Press closer, little nightingale," cried the tree, "or the day will come before the rose is finished." So the nightingale pressed closer against the thorn, and louder grew her song. And she sang of the birth of passion in the soul of a man and a maid. And a delicate flush of pink came into the leaves of the rose, like the flush in the face of the bridegroom when he kisses the lips of the bride. But the thorn had not yet reached her heart, so the rose's heart remained white, for only a nightingale's heart's blood can crimson the heart of a rose. And the tree cried to the nightingale to press closer against the thorn. "Press closer, little nightingale," cried the tree, "or the day will come before the rose is finished." So the nightingale pressed closer against the thorn, and the thorn touched her heart. And a fierce pang of pain shot through her. Bitter, bitter was the pain, and wilder grew her song, for she sang of the love that is perfected by death, of the love that dies not in the tomb. And the marvelous rose became crimson, like the rose of the eastern sky. Crimson was the girdle of petals, and crimson as a ruby was the heart. But the nightingale's voice grew fainter, and her little wings began to beat, and a film came over her eyes. Fainter and fainter grew her song, and she felt something choking her throat. Then she gave one last burst of music. The white moon heard it, and she forgot the dawn and lingered on in the sky. The red rose heard it, and it trembled all over with ecstasy and opened its petals to the cold morning air. Echo bore it to her purple cavern in the hills and woke the sleeping shepherds from their dreams. It floated through the reeds of the river, and they carried its message to the sea. "Look, look," cried the tree, "the rose is finished now." But the nightingale made no answer, for she was lying dead in the long grass with the thorn in her heart. And at noon, the student opened his window and looked out. "Why, what a wonderful piece of luck," he cried. "Here is a red rose. I have never seen any rose like it in all my life. It is so beautiful that I am sure it has a long Latin name." And he leaned down and plucked it. Then he put on his hat and ran up to the professor's house with the rose in his hand. The daughter of the professor was sitting in the doorway, winding blue silk on a reel, and her little dog was lying at her feet. "You said that you would dance with me if I brought you a red rose," cried the student. "Here is the reddest rose in all the world." You will wear it tonight, next your heart, and as we dance together, it will tell you how I love you. But the girl frowned. I'm afraid it will not go with my dress, she answered. And besides, the Chamberlain's nephew has sent me some real jewels, and everybody knows that jewels cost far more than flowers. Well, upon my word, you are very ungrateful, said the student angrily, and he threw the rose into the street, where it fell into the gutter, and a cartwheel went over it. Ungrateful, said the girl. I tell you what, you are very rude, and after all, who are you? Only a student. Why, I don't believe you have even got silver buckles to your shoes, as the Chamberlain's nephew has. And she got up from her chair and went into the house. What a silly thing love is, said the student as he walked away. It is not half as useful as logic, for it does not prove anything, but it is always telling one of things that are not going to happen and making one believe things that are not true. In fact, it's quite unpractical, and as in this age to be practical is everything, I shall go back to philosophy and study metaphysics. So he returned to his room and pulled out a great dusty book and began to read. End of narration. So we will close the Gulo Bulbul dynamic with this last couplet from Javed Manzar. बुए गुल खींचे न गुलशन में गुले तर खींचे शौक़े दीदार तेरा हमको है दर दर खींचे. So the approximate translation is, it is not the fragrance of the rose, it is not the dew-drenched appearance of the rose that pulls us into the garden. It is looking at you, looking at your face, that takes us from one destination to the other. It is you that pulls us in all directions. Okay, now that takes care of Gulo Bulbul. And that also takes care of the first line. बाग में मुझको ना ले जा वरना मेरे हाल पर. Do not take me into the garden, otherwise on my state and condition. Moving on to the second line. हर गुल-ए-तर एक चश्मे-खून-फिशां हो जाएगा. Translated, every rose, every dew-drenched rose will convert into a blood-shooting, blood-spraying eye. Now, in the second line, like I said, there are two concepts that are playing. Number one, Gul-e-Tar. Number two, Chashme-Khuun-Fishaan. So let's pick them. Gul-e-Tar. Gul-e-Tar translates to a fresh, dewdrop drenched rose. You know that it is a very beautiful visual, and we see it so much in painting, in art, in photographs. There is something very mesmerizing about a rose flower with dewdrops scattered over it, right? It has been captured by painters, by poets, by photographers. The beautiful texture contrast of the velvety rose petals with radiant, transparent pearls of dewdrops resting on them is, like I said, a beautiful visual. In Urdu Shairi, Gul-e-Tar is used to refer to the dew-drenched, rose-faced beloved. अहमद नदीम कासमी का ये शेर, रुखसार है या अक्से बरगे गुले-तर का, चांदी का ये झूमर है कि तारा है सहर का. The approximate translation is it her face? Or is this a reflection of the petal of a dew-drenched rose? Is this silver, or is she wearing a is she a silver chandelier, or is she the star of the morning itself, right? Is this her silver countenance, or is this the morning star itself? Just the beauty of the beloved, right? अली सरदार जाफरी का शेर, बहारे हुस्न जवां मर्ग सूरते गुले तर, मिसाले खार मगर उम्रे दर्दे इश्क दराज. Beautiful couplet. Translates to, spring of beauty dies young, similar to the dewdrop drenched rose. But similar to the thorn, love, however, comes with a long extended life of anguish and pain. So that is the Gul-e-Tar concept playing in the second line, dew-drenched rose, which is usually used to refer to the beloved's beautiful face. Second concept in the second line is Chashm-e-Khuun-Fishaan. Now, like we said in the keywords, Chashm is eyes, Khuun-Fishaan is blood spraying, so eyes that are shooting out blood, spraying out blood. Now at DGMZ, we are very familiar with the unique behavioral pattern of the lover's blood. In fact, we covered an aspect of it in the last episode itself. Thanks to the intense force of love and passion flowing in it, lover's blood charts a course unique and different. It has powers that are unmatched and rare. After all, the lover on his journey of love is going to spill this blood on multiple occasions, like no one ever did or ever will. Now, at times, this blood will drip and trickle, drop by drop. मोहम्मद रफ़ी सौदा का ये शेर, दिल मत टपक नज़र से कि पाया ना जाएगा, जूं अश्क फिर ज़मी से उठाया ना जाएगा. The approximate translation is heart. Do not bleed from my eyes drop by drop, because then you will be lost forever. You will not be found. Because every tear that ever falls on the ground can never be retrieved. So, dear heart, do not bleed through my eyes like this, drop by drop. Now, sometimes the lover's blood will flow ceaselessly, continuously, not drop by drop, but a continuous ceaseless flow. इस पर मीर तकी मीर का ये शेर, अब आंखों में खून दम बदम देखते हैं, ना पूछो जो कुछ रंग हम देखते हैं. So the approximate translation is, now I have reached a stage where in my eyes I see a continuous ceaseless flow of blood. And thanks to that, do not ask me what type of color I see in all my visions, because of course eyes are filled with blood, so everything that I see has taken over the hue, the color, the shade of blood. So ना पूछो जो कुछ रंग हम देखते हैं. And then अपने मिर्जा गालिब का शेर, डरे क्यों मेरा कातिल, क्या रहेगा उसकी गर्दन पर, वो खून जो चश्मे तर से उम्र भर यूं दम बदम निकले. Approximate translation, why is my murderer afraid? What will she have to give an account for? What will she have as a complaint against her? After all, for the blood that continuously flows from the eyes of the lover. Who will ever hold that against her, right? As a murder case. So why is she so worried? So, blood dripping drop by drop, blood flowing continuously. But now, in today's couplet, we see Ghalib describe the next level of intensity in terms of the lover's blood flow. In today's couplet, the lover's blood is not dripping. It is not flowing. It is shooting out like a powerful spray. It is shooting out from the eyes. It is spraying out from the eyes of the lover. So, इस पे जलील मनिकपुरी का ये शेर, रंगे महफिल तेरा बढ़ाने को आए हम चश्मे खून फिशा लेकर. Approximate translation is just to bring color to your gathering. Just to bring color to your gathering, my dear beloved, we have arrived with these blood-shooting, blood-spraying eyes of ours. मीर तकी मीर का ये शेर, थे चश्मे खून फिशा पर शायद की दस्तो दामन, है मीर दाग खून के पैरहन आस्तीं पर. So the approximate translation is, probably on the blood-shooting eyes I had kept my hand and my garment, right, my shirt, lower part of my shirt, to just restrict the spray, right? Because Mir, and the poet is referring to himself, I can see that my garments have stains of blood on them. The sleeve of my garment has stains of blood on them. So probably when I was shooting blood from my eyes, I tried to cover it with my hand and my arm. And then Ghalib का एक बहुत ही खूबसूरत शेर, राइट? दस्त गाहे दीदाए खूं बारे मजनू देखना, यक बयाबां जलवाए गुल फर्शे पा अंदाज है. Approximate translation is, look at the power look at the power of the blood-scattering gaze of Majnu. Look at the power of blood-scattering gaze of Majnu. It is as if there is a whole desert filled with roses that are almost like a carpet for your feet. In this couplet, Ghalib does an exemplary job. In this Majnu couplet, he does an exemplary job of painting a vivid visual of the one and only Majnu, who was famous for his bloodshot eyes, or probably we should say blood-shooting eyes. Ghalib first captures the force that Majnu's blood has, right? The way it is not dripping, flowing, but shooting out from his eyes due to the grief and pain he feels. And then Ghalib goes on to detail the quantification of this blood. So much blood is shooting out from Majnu's eyes that Ghalib says that the floor of the desert of Najd, where Majnu wandered for most of his life, is almost seeming like a carpet of roses. The whole desert floor is paved with the blood that he's shooting out, that it is almost a carpet of roses. And this is not a teeny mini garden where the lover is standing and shooting out blood like in our couplet today, right? Here in this couplet, Ghalib is saying paved the entire desert floor with his blood, and now the desert floor has transformed into a carpet of roses. Yak bayabae jalwae gul farshe pa andaz hai. The whole desert is full with the glory of a carpet of roses that would serve as a foot wiper in a burning, scorching desert. Thanks to his Chashm-e-Khuun-Fishaan, Majnu walks on a carpet of red roses. Or so it seems visually. So that was the second concept playing in the second line. Chashm-e-Khuun-Fishaan, eyes spraying out blood, eyes shooting out blood due to the sheer extreme pain and anguish of the lover. Now that we have covered both concepts, let's see how they play in the second line. So Ghalib says that when he is made to enter the garden, the dew-drop-drenched roses are going to transform into blood-scattering eyes as soon as they see Ghalib's state. वो है ना line, Har Gul-e-Tar, every dew-drop-drenched rose एक चश्मे खून फिशा हो जाएगा, will convert into a blood-scattering, blood-shooting eye. The visual in true Ghalib style captures a hard-hitting transformation of a velvety, soft, dew-drenched rose that epitomizes beauty into a bloodshot, blood-spraying eye that epitomizes the Majnoo-style intense, pained, grieved lover. And while the reader is taking in the extremity and intensity of this transformation, the question emerges. Why will the dew-drenched rose react this way to Majnoo's state? Why will it transform into a blood-shooting eye? Why will it not stay as a dew-drenched rose? This is where the concept we covered in the first line of Gulo Bulbul comes into play, at least in DGMC's humble opinion. The beloved in the Gul, the beloved in the Gul recognizes the Bulbul in the lover, which is Ghalib in a couplet, who has stepped into the garden. After all, love is love is love. Lover is lover is lover. Takes one to know one. So, this transformation of the dew-drop drenched rose into blood-spraying eyes is the reaction of the universal beloved residing in every rose to the universal lover which is residing in Ghalib. Ghalib says, "Such is my state, mera haal, or mere haal, that I warn you that it will have an extreme impact on every Gul-e-Tar, every dew-drenched rose in the garden, if you make me step into the garden." Ghalib is almost saying, though I am no bulbul, though I am no nightingale, I warn you, my state as a lover is so anguishing, so painful, that it will tear apart the hearts of the roses, as if they were looking not at me, but at their bulbul standing in front of them in intense pain and anguish. My pain will be recognized, it will be felt, and it will be reciprocated by each and every rose in the garden. And that will convert that rose into a blood-spraying, blood-shooting eye. And that takes care of the second line, right? It is such a... we spend so much time, right, talking about Chashm-e-Khuun-Fishaan. This is something which happens to the lover, because the anguish, the pain is shouldered by the lover. Forget about the unrequited love. In the Gulo Bulbul dynamic, there is another pain that the nightingale is bearing of the short life the rose comes with. Right? They know that as soon as this rose has blossomed fully, very soon will the time come when it will fade and wither away. Right? So there is so much pain and anguish. So this Chashm-e-Khuun-Fishaan, these blood-shooting eyes, are usually belonging to the lover. But look at how Ghalib flips it. He flips it and he says, my state, my pain, my anguish will convert the roses into Chashm-e-Khuun-Fishaan. The beloved will cry tears of blood, because of course the rose is symbolic of the universal beloved, right? They will cry the tears of blood. Such is my state. Such is my state. So, after completing first and second line, let's spend a few minutes on looking at this couplet in totality now. Ghalib is capturing a rare scenario where we get to see the impact of the lover's pain on the beloved. As you know, the usual theme we see in Urdu poetry is that the beloved is unaffected, the beloved is nonchalant, and at times downright cruel and disrespectful of the lover's pain and anguish. This couplet offers that rare window of insight into how, under all the visual layers of nonchalance and ignorance, the beloved cries. The beloved hurts. The beloved tears at her heart in reciprocation to the lover's pain. This ghazal has built a reputation in the DGMC camp of celebrating the beloved side of the story of pain in love. We covered this theme in couplet 5 under a different context. सबके दिल में है जगह तेरी जो तू राजी हुआ मुझ पे गोया एक ज़माना मेहरबान हो जाएगा. And today we get to do it again. Thanks to Ghalib, we get to see the secret hidden aspect of the beloved where she reveals herself, bears herself in pain and agony just like the lover. Or I should say, in reciprocation to the pain and anguish the lover is feeling. The nightingale knows, despite what it might seem, its pain-filled songs and laments are not falling on deaf ears. Eventually, they will hit home and rip open the heart of the rose to reveal the hidden love and pain it has for the nightingale. The rose listens intently. It listens as a bud, it listens as a bloom, and it listens when it is withering away. The short life a rose comes with, in fact, is spent in entirety glued to the songs of the nightingale. Rauf Amir का ये शेर, सो मंजरे खून रंग थे कोपल से कली तक, फूटी नहीं यूं ही गुले सज्जाक से खुशबू. Approximate translation is, the visions were all tainted with blood, right from the tainted with blood, right from the bud stage to the bloom stage. It is not easy. It is not without any effort that we see the heart of the rose split open to emit the fragrance we enjoy so much. That splitting open of the heart does not happen just like that. Does not happen just like that. There is something, there is a trigger that splits open the heart of the rose to emit the fragrance. And of course, the trigger is the nightingale's songs and laments. Ghalib allows us to celebrate the impact of the lover's intense lament and pain and grief on the beloved's heart by using the Gulo Bulbul duo masterfully in today's couplet. In Ghalib's own words, कहता है कौन नालाए बुलबुल को बेअसर, पर्दे में गुल के लाख जिगर चाक हो गए. Approximate translation is, who claims that the laments and songs of the nightingale are ineffective? They do not hit home, they do not hit the mark. You do not know that under the camouflage of the rose, there are 1,000 hearts that have split open. 1,000 times these songs have split open the heart of that rose. But on the surface, you just see the intact rose. With almost the precision of a surgical scalpel, the laments of the nightingale rip, cut and tear at the heart of the rose in reciprocation. तिलोक चंद महरूम का ये शेर, महरूम चाके सीनाए हर गुल में है वो चीज़, तासीर नाला हाय अंदील कहें जिसे. So the approximate translation is mehroom, and the poet is referring to himself. In the torn, slit open heart of every rose is that thing that we call impact of the songs and laments of the nightingale. At the heart of these split open hearts of every rose lie the songs and laments of the nightingale. नयार वस्ती का ये शेर, चाक होंगे मेरे सोजो सास से गुंचों के दिल, गुल खिलेगी चमन में नाला समानी मेरी. गुल खिलाएगी चमन में नाला समानी मेरी. Same concept, that split open, they will split open hearts of 100 roses thanks to the songs and laments of mine. Because I know these laments of mine are going to make the garden bloom. So the idea is that the flower will not bloom. To bloom, it has to split open. its heart, which is the bud, has to split open. And the trigger for that split opening or that blooming is the songs and laments. Alma Iqbal ka ye sher, Ooriyan hai tere chaman ki hure, cha ke gulo lala ko rafu kar. So that's a cheeky one. So the approximate translation is that in your garden lie bare and revealed all the beauties. Go ahead, go and darn their hearts. So the vibe is, I as a lover, with my songs and laments, have ripped open the hearts of all the flowers. So all these beauties in your garden are lying ripped open, bare, thanks to my laments and songs. So go ahead, go and darn them, repair them, sew them back, because I have had my impact as a lover. My laments have hit home as always. So that takes care of बाग में मुझको ना ले जा वरना मेरे हाल पर हर गुल-ए-तर एक चश्मे खून फिशा हो जाएगा. Do not take me into the garden, I request you. Otherwise, I warn you that every single rose in the garden will transform into blood-shooting eyes. I hope you enjoyed the impression. As always, we will be very keen to hear comments and feedback on it. We think this was like one fantastic couplet. At least for us, it was enlightening. We got to explore these beautiful concepts, right? Chashm-e-Khuun-Fishaan, Gul-e-Tar, Gulo-Bulbul, such strong concepts that we are going to, I'm sure, cross paths with multiple times as we go ghazal by ghazal through the Diwan. Okay, now, as always, for the new viewers, a strong recommendation. Please access the episode Introduction to DGMZ, because it will give you a good insight into the motivation and inspiration behind this podcast. For everyone, whenever you have time, do go and visit the homepage. It has multiple playlists segregated by topics, etc. Surf through it and pick episodes that interest you. Gentle reminder, we have DGMZ Bites available to you in shorts. We also have the Facebook page up and running. If you can join us there, that would be great. Now, I'm going to end the episode as always by sending a lot of love and light to all you dear viewers, and thanks for watching.